Michael Lansberg, brought to you by the Keg Steakhouse and Bar.
So a month ago, we do a show with Bret Hart, the hitman, and he talks about likely going to WCW. The story was breaking that weekend. It prompted huge reaction, our highest-rated show ever. Then 2 days later, in Montreal in the Survivor Series, he is counted out by Vince McMahon, and a brawl ensues afterwards. Unquestionably the most controversial bout in the history of wrestling. Since then, we have received thousands upon thousands of requests to have Bret Hart back on the show. Bret Hart called us and said that he would come on the show and tell his side of the story, and it wasn't until today that legally he felt he was entitled to do so. His first ever national television interview, he will talk about that situation. We're not talking wrestling here. We're talking business. We're talking personalities. We're talking with Bret Hart, the hitman, today. How are you?
I'm good. I'm really good.
You ready to tell your story?
Yeah, as clearly as I can.
Vince McMahon has told his side of the story, and part of this will be your response to what Vince had to say.
Yeah, that's fine. I look forward to it.
And much of what you'll see today will be the opinion of Bret Hart, not necessarily the opinion of this show, and also we'll give Vince McMahon a chance to respond at a future date. Okay. Vince McMahon, by the way, has expressed an interest to do exactly that. Let's talk about the Survivor Series in Montreal. You were on the show on the Friday. Between the Friday and the Sunday, tell us the politicking that was going on behind the scenes.
Well, I had pretty much made my deal with the WCW at that point, but out of my best interest for the WWF, I didn't want to disclose that. The problem I was having through the course of the week with Vince McMahon and the WWF was that they seemed very much hell-bent on trying to tear my character down on his exit. And I was in a very good position to make a stand on that. Like, for example, in my contract, I had what you call 30 days reasonable creative control, which is a very simple thing to just make sure that I'm protected on my way out. And they certainly didn't honor that in my contract, for starters.
So at that point, between Friday or even before that, leading up to Sunday, had Vince gone to you and say, hey, Bret, we want you to lose. We want you to, if you're leaving, not to go out as champion?
Well, I'm going to be very tactful here, and I'm not going to try to take the veil off wrestling, because I don't feel that it's fair to my fans, and I don't think it's fair to the wrestlers anywhere in any organization. But I will say that I made it very clear to them that on account of the way they positioned me as this Canadian hero with the Canadian flags waving. I had just come back from Bahrain, for example, where there was a sea of Canadian flags all the way over in Arabia, and I felt that it was very important to me after 14 years of probably the most dedicated, loyal, hard-working service that you could ever get out of a professional wrestler. I'd given this man everything you could ever ask for, and I made it very, very clear, again, I had reasonable creative control, that my character was not in any way, shape, or form going to be trashed or beaten or humiliated in Canada. And what happened from that point on wasn't so much a factor to me, but I made it very clear that I was not prepared to go out on my back in my home country, not on Remembrance Day weekend. And that was where we started to have a lot of problems. He was very insistent that I should, he talks about this time-honored tradition. I was very adamant, and we seemed to be butting heads on that issue.
Okay.
And
so let's get to that night, but and we'll look at the tape, and you can describe what was happening in the ring in Montreal right now. Tell me.
I'm not spent or anything, and the referee is in on this whole conspiracy. They put me in my hold to humiliate me as much as possible. If you see me here, I'm reaching around to grab his ankle to reverse it. See, and I have no idea the match is going to end till now. And at this point, I don't think I've ever been so humiliated or hurt in my whole life. I can't believe that after 14 years of giving this guy everything that I gave him, that he would do that to me.
Now, who are you looking at there?
I'm looking right at Vince. There's only one guy to look at.
And you just spit at Vince?
I spit right in his face. And I just couldn't believe it. I was devastated.
Now, Shawn Michaels, I see him on the bottom of the screen there. He's shaking his head. He's looking at Vince. What's his reaction?
I'm sure the whole thing was very carefully plotted out. And again, when I talked to Vince McMahon in the dressing room on Sunday, you know, he basically asked me how I felt about the match, and I told him how I felt, and I told him that I would get through today's match with my head up, and that on the following day, and it wasn't a demand, but it was a suggestion that I felt that it would be fair for my fans and everyone that I would step down as champion on the Monday Night Raw in Ottawa in front of a Canadian audience where I could at least speak without being bombarded with coins or, you know. And I thought I would love to have gone out in a very classy way and said a lot of nice things about, because I had such, I loved being in the WWF.
So you would have, under that scenario, if you had retained the belt, the following night in in Ottawa, you would have handed the belt over and
I would have stepped down.
You would have stepped down, and you wouldn't have gone to WCW as the reigning champion in WWF.
And if they'd wanted, I offered to wrestle the rest of my days out. And as far as the time-honored tradition goes, the tradition would have been honored. The problem that I have about this, Vince talking about this time-honored tradition stuff, and I know people can read through the lines, but the fact is, it's unfair for him to expect me to honor the same tradition when in fact he's got someone that like Shawn Michaels is not someone that has the same honor. That's what it's referred to, doing the honors. And it's hard for me to do the honor for somebody that has no honor. And this is the same guy that's had 3 different titles in the last year, that instead of doing the honors, he passed up and forfeited the title 3 different times. So Vince McMahon lied to me, and he cheated me in Montreal, and he did in such a degrading. It was strictly done to humiliate me and to bring my stock down and to tear my character down so that he would mean less in the WCW, which is planning on coming up here to Canada.
Well, there's a couple of things, and we'll address this when we return. Does he have the right to do that, given the fact that he's the boss and he runs the company? And as I understand, working for a company, my boss calls the shots. And second of all, the question is who screwed Bret Hart? And Vince McMahon said it was this guy here who screwed himself. Back with more Off the Record to address that in a moment.
Off the Record with Michael Lansberg is brought to you by the Keg Steakhouse and Bar. For great steaks, good friends, see you tonight.
Like wrestling or not, it is undisputable that this man sitting beside me, Bret Hart, is one of this country's most popular athletes, and certainly right now one of the most recognizable and controversial figures because of his departure from the WWF, the way it ended, and soon to be WCW. We'll talk about your future days in a moment, but the past days are a lot more interesting right now. Let's look once again at the end of your fight with Shawn Michaels. And
Totally out of the blue.
Right, but you do boast about the agility of your athletes, and I saw great agility there on the part of Earl Hebner.
Yeah.
He got out in a hurry.
Donovan Bailey.
So you're saying that and he was a friend of yours, right?
He swore to me that I was very much aware that something like this could happen, and I came to him and we talked, and he swore on his children.
He said, "I swear on my kids' lives that I'd quit my job before double-crossing you,"
and told me not to worry about it at all, and I didn't, and that's why. It's the only reason they even got a hold on me, because I knew I didn't need to even worry about it. And if you watch very closely, I'm in the middle of reversing it and getting out. And for Vince McMahon, who's probably going to see this, I'd like Vince McMahon to swear on his children, or a Bible or whatever he prefers, that was legitimate. Because I know I can swear on my children that I never ever said I quit. I never gave up. I never lost that match. I never lost that title. And I can say with all sincerity that I have my integrity still intact, that he lied to me and he cheated me, and he did it in front of all my fans around the world, and he did it to my family and to everyone else.
Well, there's something you did to him backstage after that happens in the locker room. I mean, obviously it was an enormously tense situation there, given the fact that Hebner got out in a hurry, Michaels was panicked. What happened backstage?
Well, I won't go into a lot of the details. I don't think it's something anybody's proud of, including Vince McMahon or myself. I think all I can say is that I can say I think he got what he had coming. I can say that for someone that grew up with the business like I have, I grew up in wrestling, and I love what I do, and I take great pride in it, and I don't consider it... I consider wrestling an art form, and it's something I've taken so much pride in, and as far as the honor and the tradition goes, I honor all the traditions of wrestling.
So I think I can help you out here. I mean, there's still potential for a legal situation, so you don't want to discuss it. We can draw the conclusion. Vince McMahon, as you'll see in this clip we're about to play, has got a black eye. You have got a broken hand. There's a potential collision there that we're all thinking about that took place. Okay, I want your response to this comment from Vince McMahon regarding you and what happened.
I certainly did not screw Bret Hart, nor did Vince McMahon screw Bret Hart. I truly believe that Bret Hart screwed Bret Hart. And he can look in the mirror and know that.
I think it's a very asinine statement. I don't know how we can actually justify that in any way, shape, or form. I never screwed Bret Hart at all. Bret Hart did everything the WWF ever asked him to do, including leaving the WWF. I was basically confronted. There's something else Vince McMahon has lied about, is that he said that it was a joint decision to leave. It was never a joint decision. I was approached by him in Madison Square Garden after the pay-per-view in England, and he said, basically, we are going to break your contract. We can pay you for maybe another month, maybe a couple more months, but we will break your contract, and you would be doing us a favor and yourself a favor if you would go to the WCW and try to make the best deal that you can. I did everything I could possibly do to help the company, to be a company guy. I did it with a heavy heart. I didn't want to leave. My whole heart and soul is with the WWF. I never sold out. And right up to the very, very point that I finally did get an offer from the WCW, which was unquestionably the right thing for me to take, I still called Vince McMahon up and said, I don't want to talk money. I just want to know, I just want you to talk me into staying. And if people could see what was in store for me in the next 6 months, it would have broke their hearts to see what they would have done to my character. And if Vince McMahon talks about me leaving for money, why didn't I leave a year ago for the money? I had the same offer or similar offer a year ago, and I turned that money down, and I've never been driven by money. I was driven by respect, and I didn't get any from this man.
A couple of things. Clearly, when he goes to you and he says, I get it for financial reasons, maybe your contract was too rich for them for whatever reason. This has worked out well for you financially and in terms of the amount of days that you'll have to work. You're better off in the WCW. Number two, though, Vince McMahon is your boss. He's the guy that pays you. He's the guy that runs the company. I think a case has to be made that Vince McMahon has the right to call the shots, and if he wants to end it that way, then why shouldn't he be able to end it that way?
Absolutely, except for there's one small thing here, and that is I have in my contract that says I have reasonable creative control in my last 30 days, and that relieves him of that right. And from an artistic standpoint, I've always been someone that's been very, very professional in this business. For 21 years, I've been more professional than anyone I can think of. I've missed 2 shows in 21 years. And in this case, the demands that I made were reasonable in the sense that I just wanted to leave Canada with my head up, that I had too much respect for myself and the people in this country that have supported me for so long. I don't think my demands were unreasonable. And as far as Vince McMahon goes, I mean, he's got to honor the same traditions. And there's a respect that goes in the dressing room. Like I've been called up by just about every single wrestler in the WWF that has called up and told me that they are totally on my side. They're ashamed and disgusted at what they did with me.
Who hasn't called you?
Shawn Michaels and Hunter, I think, are the only 2 that haven't called me. Everyone down there, if Vince McMahon has any integrity, why doesn't he offer every single wrestler in the company a complete and total release, that they're not obligated, give them 14 days to make a decision that if they want to work for him or if they want to work for any other wrestling organization, they can make that choice. But in the case of my brother and my brother-in-law, Davey Boy Smith and even Jim Neidhart, I think they're locked in, as are all the wrestlers. They are locked in and they're stuck in a situation where they have to work for a guy that has proven now, not just with what they did with me, that there's no respect for the wrestlers, that we're really just like circus animals that we have to jump through the hoop. We have no artistic control or a right to say in our matches or anything that happens with our characters. And if that's the case, you know, as you can see now with the TV show, they're pushing a very strong sexual point in the shows. They're pushing racial hatred. They're pushing things that I don't think a lot of wrestlers are comfortable with at all. And they're the ones that have to do it, and they have to feed their families. And it's not right that he puts that kind of onus on them. And if he was any kind of a man, he'd say, look, I will give Owen Hart a complete and total release. I'd like to see him do that. I'd like to see him give my brother Owen a release and allow him to work for anybody he wants, especially the WCW. And if he gave that same offer to all the other wrestlers in the dressing room, I don't believe he'd have a company, because nobody wants to work for this guy. That's probably why he clearly wouldn't do it. I mean, that wouldn't be good business. And one thing you got to say about Vince McMahon is he appears to know his business as he's survived and flourished over the years. We'll talk about your brother and your brothers-in-law when Off the Record returns. Stay with us.
Bret Hart from the WCW. Kind of sounds unusual, doesn't it? Yeah, you better get used to that. We'll talk about your future days in the WCW in a moment. Right now, let's talk about, and I want to put myself in Vince McMahon's position. You're leaving the next night on Nitro. They're going to announce that the current champion from WWF has come over. I got to believe from a business standpoint, he was in big trouble and had to do something to counteract that.
Well, all I know is no matter what scenario you paint, like what could have happened, I could have dropped the title the next night, or maybe I lost it during the week, or whatever. Anything that could have happened the next 21 days, say. Any scenario was better than the scenario that they did do. I mean, when you think of Vince McMahon standing there ordering the guy to ring the bell, and Shawn Michaels fearing for his life and crying in the dressing room, and you got Earl Hebner bolting back and jumping in the car.
Hold on. Shawn Michaels crying in the dressing room?
Shawn Michaels wept like a baby in the dressing room. He was
Why?
terrified. Well, I think he knew.
Guilt?
I think he felt that there was one guy that was going to come up to him, one guy that was going to come settle things with him. But I don't necessarily need to go for Shawn. I think that I knew there was one guy that, why mess with the little people? And
so he was actually fearing for his life that you were going to crack him with.
Yeah,
that's what he was afraid of.
He knows we've had a sort of a mutual dislike for each other anyway, mostly from just petty backstabbing that
but he
I finally got tired of. But again, I think any scenario would have been better than the scenario that they had. And when I think of Vince McMahon and some of the stuff that they've done on TV since then, apparently they had a little midget, and they sort of been trashing me on the TV, which is another lie that he said. He said he would never, ever trash my character after I left. Well, I know better. And they've trashed my character. I really don't watch the show because of the content anymore. And I never did see the midget, thing with the midget. But it just proves to me again that the guy is not a very honorable guy.
The thing with the midget was
small man.
Was Shawn Michaels. They announced that Bret Hart was coming back, I guess, and was going to fight him, and it wasn't Bret Hart, obviously, that came out. This was 2 Mondays ago on Raw, and clearly it's
the first time I've ever seen it.
Really?
How did Shawn Michaels pull this off?
I think sets a bad example that even just the false hope that I'm going to show up.
Yeah, but aren't you sort of forgetting? I mean, that's your...
For continually trying to use Bret Hart for ratings. If you look at the show that they have, everything they have still leads to Bret Hart. Steve Austin should have led to me, Undertaker led to me, Shawn Michaels led to me. I'm gone. I'm not even on the show, and I'll never be back. And they still have nothing else to do but write the show centered around Bret Hart, which is kind of sad and pathetic.
Well, the future for Bret Hart is WCW. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about whether he'll still be the hitman, the sharpshooter. Will he take it with him? We'll find out. We would like to tell you that tomorrow on the show we will have Roger Clemens. Hey, you're the first guy to ever make a second appearance. This is your third. Roger Clemens will be back for an encore, plus all of next week from Vancouver. We'll have Kevin Martin. We'll talk curling when we're kings. That'll be on that night on TSN. We'll discuss the great boxing movie/documentary. Then we'll talk some soccer with Bobby Lenarduzzi and W.P. Kinsella, the great author, Tiger Williams, who's nuts. And that's the rest of the week. Mike Keenan with Antonio Daniels, Stu Jackson, and Louis Pasaglia, all from Vancouver. That's next week on Off the Record. After we're done, is there anything left, Bret Hart? I don't think so. But if there is, if there's any news, join us for Sports Desk right after Off the Record. And please join us tonight. You'll be there, won't you? You're one of the celebrities.
Head table.
Sports Celebrities Auction. That goes to the Special Olympics head table. Check out Bret Hart, 8 o'clock Eastern. That's 5 o'clock Pacific time. And then Thursday night, NFL on TSN. You're a big NFL fan, right?
Absolutely.
It is the Oilers and Air McNair against the Bengals. That's 8 Eastern, 5 o'clock Pacific. That's Thursday night on TSN. We got so much email, so much response here, some comments. The WWF is making a very big mistake, letting Bret Hart go to the WCW. Good luck, Bret. I know you're going to make Canada proud. That sums up a lot of people's feelings. I bet you like that. I'm a very happy man about Bret's move to the WCW because I've been waiting a long time to see him kick Hulk Hogan's butt. And I think the question is NWO or WCW? I
haven't made up my mind. I'm really just still getting acquainted with who's who and what's right and wrong there and who the good guys are.
Do you get a say in the matter?
Yeah, of course I do.
That was the issue, of course, the WWF. So I want to read to you some of the responses that we got, some of the questions for you. Would you please ask NWO or WCW, which you've also responded to. When's your first match? I love you and your sexy body. I threw that last part in.
I know that. I haven't got a set date yet. No, nothing planned.
You have a broken hand, of course. So.
Maybe January. Right. Sometime in January.
That broken hand, which coincidentally happened at the same time as Vince McMahon's black eye. Coincidence, Bret?
Probably.
Probably. I was wondering if Bret owns the name Hitman, or does the WWF, and how about the Sharpshooter?
I own the name Hitman. I will forever always be the Hitman.
Now,
And,
some guys...
Nobody can copyright
But
hold.
some guys, though, weren't able to bring their names over, right? Their persona, their
Hardly
titles.
any of them.
So how come you did? Because in your contract you had it?
I just, over the years, struggled for that right.
Right.
And got that right.
Right. And you got creative control, and we showed you how much good that did, right?
Yeah.
I'd like to know if he plans on bringing WCW on tour in Canada for arena shows, pay-per-view, and Monday Night Nitro shows.
Absolutely. I'm sure they're going to run all across Canada as soon as possible.
What does Bret think of Mark Messier being left off the Olympic team?
I think he's still going to get on there. By hook or by crook, someone will get hurt and he'll still make it.
No, hey, this is hockey, not your sport. It doesn't get to be decided ahead of time. Yeah. Don't respond to that. Just a couple of seconds left in the show. A lot of people wondered, had you turned your back on them? A lot of Canadian fans who love you dearly. Did you turn your back on the Canadian fans?
Not at all, and I never sold out for money, and I never sold out my fans, and if anything, I think you're looking at the most loyal, dedicated wrestler in the history of in the profession who was crapped on and lied to and cheated by somebody that should never have done that, and he was wrong in what he did.
And we will give that man, Vince McMahon, a chance to respond to what you had to say. Bret Hart, will you come back again as a member of WCW?
Absolutely.
Bret, the Hitman Hart today on Off the Record. Thanks for joining us.
Off the Record with Michael Lansberg is brought to you by the Keg Steakhouse and Bar. For great steaks, good friends, see you tonight.
You got to love this a little holiday. I mean, how many times a year did you wrestle in WWF?
Oh, wow.
200 times.
At least 200. Sometimes 200. The whole is in